Good afternoon, good evening, NASCAR fans. We got another DFS NASCAR live show. Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500 tonight at Martinsville Speedway. We got a night race. Hopefully that rain holds off. Joining me as always is Dane. Level 1 to 10. How disappointed are you, first of all, you can't go to the race, and how excited are you for DFS? I know that they're going to be opposite ends of the spectrum there.
I know, complete opposites. That's such a bummer because I was very excited to be it. I live in Virginia for people who don't know. And I was very excited to go to the two Martinsville races every year, so I was pretty bummed out when I was going to miss this first full night race. I mean, I've been at them at the end last year. The Truex win in the fall ended at night, but it's kind of a bummer not to be able to see this one.
Yeah, no doubt. It should be a good one. If that rain holds off, this track is it's definitely one that's worth watching. Some people say they can't sit down for an entire race. This is one where you can definitely watch a whole race. This was one of the first ones, this one in Bristol, that I could really sit down and just watch a whole race. It's just excitement all the way around the track and constantly. Those cars on the back end get lapped right away. Is there a competition caution tonight? I forget what lap that was on.
I haven't seen it either. I've been kind of out of the loop, but I would have to assume there is.
Yeah, I would think so. Oh, here we go. Regular competition caution rules, and it is lap 60. Yeah, so it's not going to take 60 laps for those lead lap cars. Like if Blaney gets out and leads a bunch, it's not going to take him a long time to be lapping those, probably 5, 6, 7 cars before that competition caution. I would think maybe 20, 25 laps he starts lapping guys. Maybe before that, I'm not 100%, but definitely the guys in the back are going to want to move up quick so they don't get lapped before that competition caution. I guess in terms of strategy, dig into some of your article. If anyone hasn't read it yet, I'm going to post that article in chat here. But do you want to just go into a little bit about what you're looking into tonight?
It's kind of a mixture of a couple things. If you go back to Bristol, it's another 500 lap race. So I'm looking again, probably 3, maybe even 4 Dominators, just the way pricing is. And we kind of talked about that earlier in the week, right when they came out, that you can almost jam in for these top guys, and it feels kind of weird. But there are 500 laps. That's tons of fastest laps, tons of laps led that are out there available. So I'm fine getting to 4 Dominators. Kind of going to focus in on 3. And there's some almost very too obvious fades out there. I'm really zoning in my player pool, running the 20 max and a few single entries today. So I'm really zoning in my player pool, maybe even Xing out half the field if I can, just to really narrow it down so I have a way to, if my core hits, and I can have a nice night.
Nice. The only other thing I'm really looking at in terms of what you haven't already mentioned is I've got on my sheet the track type history, looking at the flat tracks, the flat short tracks over since the start of 2019 with this new package. The same, this is a little bit different package than last year. Obviously, they took away some of that extra downforce that was made the mile-and-a-half tracks a little bit better. It kind of downgraded the short tracks a little bit. So I'm not looking a whole lot into it, but it's still, those short flat tracks do run a little bit different, and there is a group of drivers that does correlate to that type of track. So that's one thing I definitely looking at. And like I said, I'm going back to the start of last year for that information. But other than that, I'm definitely agree with you on Dominators. We've seen a driver lead, I believe, 300 plus laps in 3 straight races here at Martinsville, and before that it was like you'd have 3 drivers of 100 plus, 150 plus, possibly one in the 200. So I'm definitely looking at 3 Dominators myself for this race. So I'm 100% on board with you there as well. If I guess yeah, go ahead.
With the flat tracks, it's I mentioned that I remember back in the strategy article at the very beginning of the year with this new package, short tracks and road courses. It definitely brings in driver skill a little bit more with the less downforce, like you mentioned. So that's just something to watch out for. Maybe some guys in the lower price ranges that have some experience and things that are a little bit tougher to drive, kind of like a Ryan Freese or things like that. And he's one of my favorites down there this week.
Yep, no, that makes a ton of sense. Give me a sec. I'm just sharing this here. I realize that for some reason with this YouTube, when I go and change the show name and then I go and share it on Twitter or Facebook, it's still calling it last week's show. I've updated it. I've updated the picture. I've updated the title, but it's still... So if you're seeing this on Twitter, I'm not actually that crazy, everyone. Please. I know it's not the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 anymore. Or actually one post I put on Facebook just now actually said it was still the Coca-Cola 600. Nope. Don't think so. So it's not really cooperating with me, but either or, we're live. We're talking Martinsville here. And just going to go, out of those, you say you're looking at 3 Dominators. How would you rank them in order of your top 3 Dominators? Mine, personally, I'm just going to throw them off here real quick. Obviously, Ryan Blaney, he's starting first tonight. I think he can get out, at least lead those first 60 laps into that competition caution with a chance that he can, if he's going to... I forget to check the pit stalls, but I believe he's got a good one there as well, where he's going to be able to possibly get out and lead even more laps. I think he's a car that can probably lead 100 plus, so I'm ranking them right now: Blaney, Truex, and then Keselowski.
Okay, our first 2 are definitely right there in line with each other. They just completely whiffed on this pricing for Blaney, and they
oh my god, yeah,
for weeks. But now to put him out there in a 500 lap race at Martinsville, where he's going to be on the pole at 8,400 starters. And he's been really good here in the past. So he's definitely number 1 for me. Truex dominated here last year in the fall. He's been looking a little better. Recently, all the Toyotas have. So he's number 2 for me. Third is really, it's a toss-up. And the 2 guys are Truex's teammates, Kyle Busch and Denny. And I've not been on Kyle very much this year, but or Hamlin for that matter. But Hamlin been very good here. Kyle been very good here. I think they're great options for Dominators. Hamlin starting back in 11th or 12th.
Yeah.
Little bit of place differential upside in there too. I think he's going to get up front 11-9. Maybe that scares a few people off, and his ownership's not out of control. Kyle, he's been looking better recently, and 10-7 might be the cheapest he's been all year.
Yeah, I guess we should have let off with the whole pricing thing. This week just seems a little bit more crazy. Like DraftKings it seems like they're trying to adjust their algorithm for pricing every single week. So we sat there and waited, and we talked about it. Why is it taking so long for pricing to come out? Oh, they're obviously waiting for the draw. Well, we waited for the draw, we got the qualifying order, and it's just, it's like this pricing was out in 2005, maybe even 2010, somewhere in that range. Jimmy Johnson at 12.5. He would have to be starting pretty much at the back of the pack for me to consider him. But yeah, you said it with Blaney. He's just starting first with that chance of Dominator points. He should not be 8,400 on DraftKings with Christopher Bell right below him at 8,200, who's never raced here in a cup car. So that's a little crazy. And then the other thing going along with, I'm just going to lead this into one of the questions in chat. Someone had asked, why are we so high on Priest? I don't think we're that high on Priest. I think we're pretty much in agreement, me and you. Let me know if I'm wrong, that when we're looking at the value guys from even the 5,000 to 7K range, I'm looking at DeBenedetto, Newman, Ty Dillon, Ryan Priest, Chris Buescher, and Michael McDowell as all value plays. And I'm going to pretty much try and get, when I'm building, I think I'm going to do I'm only at 10 right now, and my plan was 40, so we'll see if we get there after the show. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there, but if I do, I'm planning on splitting my exposure between those 6 drivers pretty much almost equal. If I had to rank them just due to points per dollar, I'd probably have Priest and Buescher a little ahead of McDowell, just for the cars that they are in. But as for who I think is going to finish the highest, I would put DeBenedetto and Newman in that category. So take that for what you will. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Priest last year here, he was very good, and he's with the same team this year. Let's see, he's in the car that Buescher was in last year, and he was 12th and 21st. So they had the team had good equipment here last year. He's had some experience in coming up through the minor ranks in cars that were fairly tough to drive. So that just kind of adds to it for me. But I am like you. I'm going to kind of mix and match these guys down here. I'm not going to go all in on just one of them. no point to do that when you have guys like McDowell, Busher, Priest, Custer, Austin Dillon. Maybe he gets a little ownership downgrade because there's the narrative out there that maybe he gets out of the car mid-race, his wife goes into labor.
Yeah.
Ty Dillon, all that range. You just got to mix and match those guys. This is maybe the biggest stars and scrubs night or race that I've seen.
Yeah, and it makes it they're really making it easy. Like normally when I start getting above 20 lineups, I really find it tough to not get overexposed to, usually there's only like maybe 2 or 3 maximum of these value guys that you want to run 30% in your lineups. Whereas this week, like I said, between there's 3 below 6K, and then there's 3 more between 7 or 6 and 7K that I really, really like. And then I like Stenhouse for GPP pivot off those guys, just because, I don't know, most people don't like Stenhouse to begin with. And he's either really good. We talked about this last show on Sunday where he's like really good or really bad. So I'll take that in GPP for sure. And then Cole Custer, someone had asked about earlier, he's another guy I would mix in. So there's just a ton of guys. So it makes, like you said, stars and scrubs. You can easily take, let's go Hamlin, Truex, and Keselowski, or Blaney, Keselowski, Truex, Harvick, Hamlin, Truex. You can mix 3 of those top guys, like in the 9K range and up, or mid 8K range and up, that have really high ceilings. You can mix those 3, even to a point, 4 of them if you want to double punt. There's so many options, and that's why I really, really want to jam in as many lineups as possible, just to get as many different combinations of those top guys that I think all have top 5 and winning potential. And then you only need those 2 punts. And if you pick the right 2 punts that either pick up their place differential or maybe overperform in terms of finish, that's when you're talking about takedowns. So I don't exactly know. I think that in terms of ownership, I think the ownership's going to be pretty spread out between those guys. I think your Newman and DeBetadetto will be a little bit lower owned just because of the price savings with, McDowell, Priest, and Bush are all below 6K. I think a lot of people will try and jam 2 of those guys in, just like we're doing. So that's where I'm going to make some pivots to Ricky Stenhouse. I'm going to have a lot of DeBetadetto tonight, even though you look at his track history, it maybe looks a little shaky. That wasn't in the current car that he is in at all. And even last year, he was 20th and 16th at this track.
Yeah. I will say that about the pricing. I think we are going to see a little bit of spread out ownership. So that's nice. And we don't have a guy who is just going to be 60% on. I don't believe. I don't know that there'll be anybody in the field that gets the high.
Okay, so any love for Clint Bowyer tonight? He's definitely got upside. He's won here. I believe that was the snow race where they waited off the snow. He ended up winning that one. I think that was the Bowyer win. That was an awesome picture. One of the pictures I'll never forget of him running down the track to grab his kid. It had been so long since he won. I'll never forget that race in particular. But where's he starting tonight? Oh, fourth. Yeah. See, yeah. I think he's going to be low owned because he's starting 4th. I think he's going to be low owned because of that.
Yeah, I might throw him in. He's kind of a 2 or 3 lineup guy out of the 22 or 3 that I have.
Oh, there's my calculator.
The long race, we can see a lot of Dominators.
Yeah, for sure. I like the price, the mid 8K price, and I think if Blaney's going to be super high owned, that's a perfect GPP pivot to Bowyer. If Blaney doesn't lead the first 60 laps, he gets passed early on and doesn't lead those 60 laps, or maybe he does lead 50. I don't think that's enough. If he gets in a crash and finishes outside the top 20th or something like that, that's not enough for him to hit value. And if Bowyer finishes with the top 5 in that same range, I think that pivot is definitely there if you want to pivot off the ownership in this race, because I think Blaney is going to be high owned at 8,400 starting first with that Dominator potential 100% there.
I agree. Do you think any of these guys in the 7 and 8K range that are place differential plays are going to get really glossed over? Bubba Wallace, not usually big on him at all, but he was good here last year, and I assume he's going to be low on. And I am a little different I do like Christopher Bell a little bit, even at that 8,200 price tag. Starting back in 32nd, he does have a little bit of upside if he can get us maybe a 15 to 20th place finish. That's still nice value at 82.
Yeah, that is pretty good upside, to be honest with you. You know, I was kind of off Bell. I know his price is crazy. He's going to be low owned. Same with Bubba. Looking at Bell, just thinking 15th to 20th, you're looking at 36 to 46 points, and I think that is enough. You know, we talk about the punt range being 20 to 30 points we're happy with, pretty much. So you jump up into that next range. I think at 8,200, we can totally live with a 20th place finish at 36 points. And he, like you said, he's got the upside, I think, of that 15th place finish. So I'm definitely on board with that as a GPP play. Going with Bubba, he has top 20s in each, like both races here last year. So I mean, like a 20th place finish is 27 points. So I'm a little more, I guess, on Bell than Bubba, just because I think 27 points at that same price point is a little on the low side, and I don't think Bubba has 15th place upside unless something really goes right, and that still only gives him 37, whereas Bell with a 15th place finish gives us 46. So that's a 9-point difference there, and I think Bell has a better chance of getting to that 46 than Bubba does to get into that 37. So I'm a little more on Bell than Wallace. I probably won't have any Wallace because of that, but you've now sold me to get a little bit of Bell in GPP, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'll have more Bell than Bubba, but I know it's a completely different package and everything. But I do remember last year at the race, you was thinking, I think he ran right outside, barely just outside the top 10 for a lot of that race. So
yeah,
and then finished a few spots behind that. But I think the upside is potentially there, and at low ownership, I'll have him. He's another 3-4 lineup type guy.
Nice. And then one of the questions here was, out of those cheap guys that we talked about, which ones would you consider most for cash? To be honest with you, Michael McDowell stands out as the top cash play for me. He's been super consistent here for the price that he's at and the equipment that he's in. Like you're looking at like a floor of, I mean, he's finished 31st here, 26. Those are the two races outside the top 25. But I would say his floor is kind of medium finish range, is going to be right in that 25th place finish. And at 5,100, I think that makes a lot of sense around that 25th. I mean, that's 23 points around 25, but he's got that upside of 30. I doubt he gets any fast laps or anything, but at 5,100, I think we can live with 23 points at 25th place finish. So I definitely like that, him being the cheapest. And then Buescher would be up next for me in terms of a cash play. I mean, Preece has got top 20 finishes too. Buescher's got a lot more of a track record that we can rely on, much like McDowell in that terms, is that his high point was 11th, 12th, 13th. He's got 3 of those finishes, 21st, 21st, and 23rd. Those are his last 6 races. No worse than 23rd and as high as 11th. So I think he's kind of around the 20th place car. And looking at the matrix for Buescher, a 20th place for him is 28 points. And I think he's got more upside of that. He's got that 35 to 40th place upside, I think, in the right scenario for Buescher. So those two for sure for me.
Yeah, I agree on McDowell, and then I can see the argument between Preece and Buescher, either one. I think that's almost a toss-up, and that's one of the decisions you just are going to have to make in cash. Maybe if you need that extra 100 in the lineup, then go Buescher. If not, maybe Preece. I don't know if it'll get that tight. As far as flipping to the other side, I think the GPP play in that range is Austin Dillon. I kind of mentioned him earlier.
Yes.
I just don't think, not even, there's a few tax deciding on DraftKings, but which is very odd to me. You don't see that very much, but I think it's more because the people around him, and he's starting the farthest forward out of all those guys, and he's one of the more expensive ones when you can drop down into that upper 5K range and get a Preece, a Buescher, or low and get McDowell starting farther back. But Austin Dillon he's been running well. Him and Tyler Reddick have both been running very well. Recently, I do think Reddick's starting a little too far forward for me, but I'll definitely take some Austin Dillon. 20 seconds.
There's that
learner
interruption
here
for
last
my
year.
kid I told you about. Remember pre-show I said that at some point my kid's going to come running in and ask if it's 5 o'clock? Boom, right on the nose. There she is. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. Next question up here is about, do you think Blaney's going to lead? I know we both chose Blaney as our Dominator, so the answer is going to be yes for us. The comparison that he had asked was Logano. Is Logano going to take over? For me, my reasoning here, just looking at a bunch of different things in terms of Dominator, is Logano just hasn't been a Dominator, A, at this track, B, at this type of track, the short flat, going back to the start of 2019. And C, even looking at recent form, he's a lot lower in terms of Dominator. So I don't see, he hasn't been the guy that's been out there dominating. I know Blaney hasn't either, but Blaney's starting first. I like that. He gets to choose his lane. I think Blaney is the guy that gets out front. So it is going to be Blaney for me for sure. I know you're on the same page there. I just wanted to answer that for him before we move on. The next one we had answered as well. It was Jimmy Johnson fade because of price. For me, 100%. Probably have some on FanDuel. He's only 10-2 over there. Quite cheap. Starting 21st. I like that. He's got top 10 upside for sure at this track. Let's look at the career track history. I believe he's got 9 career wins here. So he's got a lot of grandfather clocks sitting in his house. So you really can never count him out. He's close to winning, I feel. But on DraftKings, there's just too many other guys that I absolutely love that are a lot cheaper than Jimmy Johnson at 12.5. So DK, it's definitely a fade for me. Are you going to have any Jimmy Johnson on DK?
No.
Okay,
I
perfect.
Think
Moving on.
To dominate at that price, and I don't see it happening.
Me neither. Yeah, so Jason says roster's tough this week, so I disagree, and I know you do too because we talked about it. If you're multi-entering, if you're doing one lineup, yes, very tough to try and narrow it down to your core 6 drivers. For multi-entry, I think it is an awesome setup this week because, like I said, I can build 40 lineups by hand easily. This is one week where you definitely don't need an optimizer to make a bunch of lineups. I build by core, so I'll go and I'll take a core. So, for instance, one of my cores today is going to be Blaney as a Dominator, and then I think Truex is going to get up there as well. So I'm going to put Blaney and Truex together, and then I'm with Blaney and Truex, I'll probably throw Keselowski in there 5 times, and then I'll take Keselowski, I'll put Kyle Busch in there 5 times, I'll take him out, and then I'll change up the core again, and just keep doing that over and over and over again, spreading out equal, like we said, equal exposure to those 6-7 value guys that we talked about in that 7K and below range. So I love the lineup construction for multi-entry this week. It's one of my favorite weeks actually for building just because of that. It's real easy to track. And I mentioned to someone in our Slack chat, RotoPro Slack chat earlier, what I use to multi-enter when I'm not using like any on an optimizer. It's called the multi-highlighter tool. You can get it on, it's a Google Chrome extension. It's pretty much you just search a name just like you do on DraftKings, but when you search that name, it narrows it down to just those lineups with that driver. So what I do is I got all my lineups showing on the DraftKings page on my laptop. I'll use that tool and I'll search, say, Blaney, Keselowski, Truex. With the space in between all of them, highlights each driver on that DraftKings page a different color. So not only with the RotoGrinders extension do I see my exposure to each driver across all my lineups, I can now see who is in what lineups with who, and I can really track it better when doing it. So if you're building by hand, definitely hit me up in the chat or in private message or something, and I'll definitely help you out get that app going for you. Anyone else? You're looking at a pivot?
I don't know that this is a pivot. I wanted to ask you what you think about. This is a guy that I've been on the last few weeks, and I think you were last week for sure. He's definitely underpriced, but with all the guys around him, what do you think of Erik Jones? He thinks how owned? I don't know that he will, but I think I can get away from him, even though I like Toyota.
Jeez, yeah, Jones was tough for me this week. I know he's only 6,500. I mean, that price is excellent. I just, at starting 13th, that kind of feels like his upside at this track is right around that 10th to 13th. And his downside, I think, is like outside top 20. For that reason, I think he's going to be super low owned. And me personally, right now, in 20, I don't even think 40 lineups I'm going to get to him just because of so much love for the other 6-7 drivers that I highlighted on the sheet and that we talked about here. I just don't think I'll have any exposure to him. I could definitely see it though. I mean, he's shown us before.
Where I'm leaning. Yeah, that's where I'm leaning, and I hope the price sucks some people in, and I'll take my stand the other way.
Yeah. Question from Mike: when starting lineups, how many guys starting in the top 7 would be too many at this track? I don't think any is too many, to be honest. The correlation between something I ran this week was correlation between starting position and finishing position, and it is one of the highest correlations when you look at any given track in NASCAR to starting position and finishing position. So I don't, if you've had 5, 6 of the top 7 in your starting lineup, I don't think you're wrong there. The only thing I would say is that kind of limit, you would need one of those guys or at least 2 of those guys to dominate a heck of a lot of laps, and all of them to finish up there. If one of those drivers falls back outside the top 10 in their finish, I don't think you're going to take a GPP down by any matter, because I think there's going to be some guys that pick up some big place differential, or at least some double-digit place differential, where they're going to get into the optimal lineups. So there's a situation where it would work. So I guess on average, I would say at this race, 4s probably would be my target started inside the top 7.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be my max, but I don't think you can have any more than that anyway. So
no, price-wise, I don't think it's going to.
I think last week is almost similar to this. If you look last week, I wasn't very big on Blaney. He was starting 7th on Sunday, and he ended up being on the winner, at least in the $3.20 max, and he finished 4th. He only led 2 laps, had only 21 fastest laps. I think that you can get a similar thing out of here. If one of the 4 guys that you have starting in the top 7 just finishes in the top 5, maybe gets a few fastest laps along the way, I think you'll be fine. But that kind of reminds me of that with Blaney. And this week, one of the Dominators in that range, actually a couple of them, if you count Bowyer, are in the 8K range. So I think they can definitely pay off just by finishing up there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then thoughts on Chase Elliott. I know we didn't talk about him. It seems he was running, he crashed in the playoff race. He started 2nd. He finished 36. His average running position was 28th. I mean, it was pretty early in the race. I'm looking at the laps here. Oh, no, it was lap 445, so it was near the end. So seeing an average running position of 28th, whether that's skewed a little bit by those final laps that he finished in the garage, obviously a little bit. But what stands out for me, like, you really have to, with so many guys that we'd like in that top tier, at least for me, you really got to take a stand and pick 3 or 4 of them that you're going to have that 50% ownership across your lineups if you're multi-entry, or 60% that you're going to have across your lineups, or whatever that may be. For me, I'm looking at a bunch of things, to be honest. I'm looking at average run position, average finish, not only here, which he kind of falls outside that. He's got a 13.5 average finish the last 4 races here. He's one of the lower guys in terms of fantasy points per race here. And then he's got looking at the short flat tracks. That really stands out. He's only got 2 top 10s in the last 8 short flat tracks since the start of last year. That includes 2 at Martinsville there as well. And just for anyone that's maybe looking at the sheet, I didn't list what those tracks were, but short flats, you're looking at Phoenix ×2, Martinsville ×2, Richmond ×2, and you're looking at New Hampshire is now just 1 race per year. So those are the races that are included in that short flat history. So his average run position is 15.6 on that track type, and average finish of 19.5. So I like Hamlin and Harvick and Truex and Keselowski in that 9K range and up a lot more. So it's not that I don't like Elliott. I didn't make him red, or I'm not a full fade. I wouldn't talk anyone off of him because he has some high finishes here, 2nd and 3rd. He was 2nd at the spring race last year, but he's just not in my core today. Your thoughts on Elliott?
Yeah, he's not for me either, just because I like Hamlin a little bit more than him. And all the guys around him I probably like more. So he might be a guy that I get in 1 or 2 when I'm just kind of mixing and matching up there. But for the most part, like you mentioned, I'm not going to mix and match as much up there as I will down in the value range.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with you. It's just my mix and matching up top is going to be with, like you said, 3 or 4 drivers, and then I'm going to mix in those other 6 down below so I can get as much exposure to the top guys that are in my core as possible. So when Truex, Keselowski, Hamlin, and Harvick say all finish top 5, or Blaney in there as well, and he leads a ton of laps, and that core 3 or 4 drivers goes off, it just gives you a lot of chances to hit the nuts when you've got that many value guys that you can mix and match with them to make sure you get the right combination of 2 of them. Is pretty much what I'm attempting to do. Is I just want to get 2 of those value guys right. If I can get that combination with those top guys that are either going to dominate or finish 1, 2, 3 at the end of the day, because we see that a lot here. We don't see a lot of these rookie guys getting up there and winning their first race at Martinsville. It's like veteran. So definitely age and experience, something that I'm looking to in those top guys. And so just another reason Elliott's a little bit younger, but Hamlin, Harvick, Truex, and Keselowski, they got tons of experience here. So that's just the way I'm leaning this week. Like I said, I wouldn't talk anyone off of Elliott, but I won't have any exposure myself tonight just because I wanted to make a stand like we talked about.
I agree.
Okay, I'm just going through. Does AJ have a price on DraftKings? Did you see?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
He's like 100 below Austin.
Right, so the scenario would be if he does start, he's going to be scored from Austin Dillon's starting position of 22nd, but he will start from the rear. So the question in chat here is, if AJ starts, do you start him? I am going with absolutely no. He hasn't been in a cup car in a while. This is a very tough track to pass, and he's going to be starting with, let's just say there's 39 cars. If he starts, he's going to be minus 17 place differential right off the bat, and I don't see much more upside than where he's going to start at 22nd if he does start. The reason he's going to start at the rear, Jason just asked, why is he starting from the rear? Because of a driver change. Driver change, tire change, engine change, brake pad change, whatever, not brake pad, but any mechanical part that's changed after qualifying. But there was a qualifying draw. So anything that happens between that qualifying draw and leading up to the race, that puts that driver automatically has to start at the rear. So pace laps, they get out there behind the pace car at the start of the race, they fall to the back of the race because they made changes. That's the way it's always been. So that's why AJ would start dead last, 39th, while his starting position would stay the same, which is Austin Dillon's, which is 22nd. But that driver change would send him to the rear. So that's a 0% chance I'll play him.
I agree.
Awesome. Okay, so thoughts on Blaney and Bowyer together? Yep, I'm totally down with that. Bowyer, I think, is going to give you a little bit of lower ownership with all the other guys, and Blaney gives you that high. Someone was asking earlier, this leads into PGA, which is, if everyone's paying attention, we're going to be doing a show on RotoPro's YouTube channel tonight, talking PGA. It's a busy day, but this just leads into that. In terms of ownership, in GPP, you don't have to fade all the high projected ownership guys. You don't want to build a lineup of 6 guys that are projected high ownership, because you're going to be splitting the winnings with 10,000 or 500 of your closest friends, especially in a small field like NASCAR where there's only 39 drivers, probably only 30 that you're actually rostering or would consider rostering. So you don't have to, the point here is you don't have to just pivot off of every high-owned guy or every projected high-owned guy. You can have 2 or 3 high-owned guys. It's those 2 or 3 pivots that you make that can be crucial to giving you a one-off lineup, or at least not splitting with 500 people. Maybe you're only splitting with 4 or 5.
Yep, exactly. That's something I make sure I leave in my article every week. For I'm not sure if it's in NASCAR, but I know it's in the golf one every week. Is don't go complete when you come to GPTs. That don't necessarily mean you need 6 guys under 5% or something to win.
Yeah.
Chalk plays are chalk plays for a reason. Maybe not this week golf, I guess, but. In NASCAR especially, chalk plays are chalk for most of the time for a very good reason. So don't just go away from them just because.
Yep, I agree with you there 100%. So that kind of covers all the questions. We went a little bit over our half an hour timetable, but if you guys have other questions, we got an hour and a half, hour and 25 minutes here to make our lineups. So hit us up, hit me and Dane up in the RotoPros chat. We're going to be in there leading up to lineup lock. We're going to have our skeletons posted. Hit me up in my Patreon chat. I'm going to have information posted there leading up to lock answer questions, or over on DFSR.com as well. Thanks for joining me, Dane. Let's go make some lineups, and hopefully this rain holds off and we get an awesome Martinsville race tonight. I'm pumped.
Yeah, me too. Let's hope it holds off, and everybody be sure to join us here in a few hours for the golf.
Yeah, about 4 hours or something like that. Not sure. I'll talk to you offline, but probably around somewhere between 8:30, 9:30 Eastern, something like that. We're going to talk some golf. So cheers, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.